been a long time. What, 2 weeks?
Yeah. Sometimes I think not long enough.
Yeah. I was. I have to say, I've been dreading this one
Yeah.
because
I
I don't know if our friendship survives this. I don't know if the podcast survives this.
well, for the viewers, Mr. Thomas, what's the thing that they've got to know about this?
The views and/or opinions represented in this podcast and all podcasts by the title "Smart and Dumb" do not necessarily reflect the true beliefs and/or opinions of the two hosts, myself, Mr. Thomas.
And me.
What's your name?
Oh, Mr. Ray.
Thank you.
Yeah. So here's the deal, guys. This podcast is called Smart and Dumb, and that implies that one of us has to take the dumb side of a debate. So it's a joke, and you can never, ever take it seriously, or you're banned. You're banned.
For the record, I've known you 9 years.
Yeah.
I've never once taken him seriously.
Yeah, that's why it works. All right. So today's topic, as we go down the list, has been wildly suggested.
And I think highly anticipated.
Is a discussion about the moon landing. Now, for the purposes of what I'm sure is going to be the highest grade of intellectual discussion, knowing you.
Well, I am like smarter and a genius.
Bet. You know, you've got hacks. I don't think you can claim that because you were born with hacks. All right, and I had to work. I had to
from you.
No, I had to work for what I had.
You did not.
I had to work for it.
No, you did not, man. You're the man who, in college, would wait to do all of his homework until the last day. Do it. Drink like 500 milligrams of caffeine. Do the homework and do the test, and still came out with a C or a B. I don't want to hear that from you.
For the record, I drank 500 milligrams of caffeine before a nap. I was well over a gram for many of those nights.
Okay, well, still, that again proves my point that you could turn around and do this. So I don't want to hear that I've got hacks.
Okay, fair enough. So, for the sake of discussion, and because I happen to be, for reasons, coincidentally informed on this side of the argument, I may or may not know some people. I know a guy who initially, and I've known this person for a long time, who has always brought up this argument that the moon landing is fake. And at first,
I can't believe I'm doing this.
At first, it's really easy to just discredit it and be like, okay, this person's crazy.
No, because it is easy.
You're just not ready to handle the hot truth bombs I'm about to drop on you.
Yeah, I am, because like the hot lies, like the hot air, like everything that comes out of your mouth.
Well, it's going to be about body temperature, but I digress. Over time, I became familiar with these arguments, and I'm now going to articulate them to the best of my ability to defend something that I never thought I would be in the position that I had to defend. Because obviously, the moon landing is fake.
I'm so disappointed in you.
Well, you know what? That makes two of us. So I'm going to begin by stating, first and foremost, that in 1958, President Eisenhower founded the agency that would later be called NASA.
Yep.
Okay. National Aeronautic Space Association, is that it? Administration, so on and so forth. Okay. And this is a government agency that operates somewhat independently. It is administratively controlled by a citizen, not a government operative or agent of the government. But they are appointed by the president.
So they are a member of government if they're appointed, because they have to be approved by the Senate.
Well, but NASA likes to claim that they're not government affiliated.
No, but that's BS, and everybody knows. And you can.
So maybe NASA's lying about something?
Well, no, but show me a quote where NASA said that they're not government affiliated. Because I've got the Department of the Interior right here that says that NASA's um, under their Department of the Executive Branch, and that's why the president appoints a secretary, an administrator of NASA. That NASA's remote Earth sensing, and that's why it has to um, follow the United Nations Outer Space Treaty article, unlike unlike private companies like SpaceX.
Well, I'm going to say that you may have me on that one, and especially the current one, of course, a stellar example of this that certainly goes in your favor. Bill Nelson was a senator before he was sworn in as the NASA administrator on May 3rd of 2021, and that is per NASA. And he was tasked with carrying out, it says, and I quote, carrying out President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris's vision for NASA to demonstrate American leadership in air, space, and on Earth for the benefit of all humanity.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're willing to admit that NASA's a government organization, right?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Okay.
For the sake of argument. That's going to come back up later. You got anything you want to say, or do you want me to go in here and make an argument that you're not ready to keep up with yet?
I highly doubt that I'm not ready for it, but let's go.
All right. So the first thing that I want to bring up is a historical narrative, okay, that in 1969, July 16th of 1969, that the Apollo 11 mission results in our famous astronauts, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, landing on the moon. Okay, and subsequent photos taken, videos taken. We have the lunar landing module that you got pictures of that and them hopping off of it nice and slow. Like you got pictures of the footprints. You've got pictures of the moon itself and the shadows. You've got pictures of them hanging the flag. Mm-hmm. And for the record, there are a lot of people who debate the moon landing being fake because the flag waves in the air and there can't be wind on the moon. And that's a dumb argument. Okay, because it's not that there's wind on the moon, but there's no air on the moon, or at least not enough air on the moon for there to be enough air resistance to stop the flag from moving from when it was put up in the first place.
It was also had metal rods in it, so it could, and they kind of got bent as they were putting, because it was hard to put in the ground.
Yeah, but like they see it moving and claim that there's wind blowing, which of course would indicate that it's probably on Earth. Probably. But for the record, since there's no air resistance happening, there's nothing to stop the flag from moving or to change its pattern of movement, because you're not going to lose the momentum from when they put it up. So I'm actually going to help you on that one. That I'm omitting that argument that many people have is false, is a dumb argument. I disagree with that. So in 1969, we put men on the moon. We're the first country that ever does this. We're at the what you might call the height of the Cold War at this point. I mean, this is during Vietnam. This is right around
the start of detente, so I wouldn't call it the height. It's definitely the 60s are definitely the flashpoint of. I would say the early 80s was the height of the Cold War.
All right. Well, I would say that I'd say that you're an idiot.
There's definitely an argument.
I would say that you're dumb and that you shouldn't be able to dispute that claim, but that's okay. You're allowed to have,
because Nixon was in office. Nixon was a strong proponent of detente, which called for the lessening of tension with the Soviet Union.
I don't speak whatever language you're trying.
It's French. I know you're an uneducated buffoon.
That's the language of surrender. Of course,
the French. The French have one of the best military records in history.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did most of the heavy lifting during World War I against the Germans. They conquered Europe as the Franks.
Yeah.
In the 1000s, they beat the English during the 100 Years' War. I mean, Napoleon. They have a record of military excellence.
Yeah. What did it get them?
I mean, one of the strongest European powers still in a world and time when Europe is less and less relevant on the world stage, and France remains relevant and factors into how people respond. I mean, I would say they don't have the raw natural resources or the empire to support a bid for superpower status, but they're not doing bad.
By European standards. Okay. All right. So in the time that there has been from 1969 to today, how many years is that?
What is it? 60? It's like 20. It's like 60 years, I think.
55 years. Okay.
Roughly. Yeah.
55 years since we've been on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
We've
no,
never.
No, that's not true.
Well, since we've had men on the moon.
No. Because we quit sending men to the moon, I want to say in 71. I think that's when Apollo 19 happens. Oh, is it Apollo 19? Is it 17, 18, or 19? I have two. When was last Apollo moon landing Apollo mission? It was between December 7th and December 19th of 1972.
Okay.
And that was Apollo.
But in 1970, future Apollo missions became canceled. Apollo 17 was the last crewed mission to the moon for an indefinite amount of time. So we'll talk about that later. That's going to come up too.
Why?
Good question. I'll get to that.
Well,
so
in this time, move on with our lives.
In this time, from 1969
forward.
Okay, what? I'll give you an extra year. From 1970, which was 1 year later, forward, we didn't put anybody on the moon.
No, that's not what I just said.
That's what we just agreed on.
No, it's not. I said December 7th and between December 7th and December 19th of 1972.
1972?
Yes.
Okay, my numbers say 1970,
well, no,
but
because you looked up when we canceled everything after 17 because we had already funded everything.
Okay,
up to
you know what? Actually, yes, you're right. You're right. I misinterpreted that, but I'll give you to 1972. That still fits my narrative, so I'll allow that. Okay, I haven't lost ground here yet. 1972, we stopped sending people to the moon, and there's no other country yet to date who has been able to successfully pull this off. You agree with that?
People, yes.
People. Now, of course, rovers, yes. China actually just put one on there recently, I believe. We definitely did something big there that nobody else seems to have figured out how to do it. Do you think there's any reason why nobody else?
Yeah, because we spent like 3/4 of the national. We spent an ungodly amount of money in the 1960s to do it, during a time when the rest of the world was in two phases, still recovering from the effects of World War II. In China's case, they were recovering from losing millions of people fighting the Korean War, and they were suffering the effects of the Great Leap Forward under Mao, that was killing everybody. The Soviet Union never really recovered from World War II, despite what they try to make you believe. So the Soviets spent the 50s. They didn't take Marshall Plan money, which, makes sense.
Okay.
So, the western half of their country where everybody lived was destroyed by 4 years of some of the most brutal fighting in history between 41 and 45. Mm-hmm. The Soviet Union was only able to feed itself during those years because we gave them food.
Okay.
So the Soviet economy was not primed, could not both support its massive military budget that it used to subjugate Eastern Europe.
Hey, you ever see that Tucker Carlson interview with Vladimir Putin?
You know what?
Because you're reminding me. I'm looking at Putin across the table.
You've literally spent 15 minutes not even making a point yet. So I'm going to be able to take 2 minutes and explain, give some history.
Yeah. A quick 30-second in and out, 5-minute adventure. All right. This ends with you and I both crying.
Hopefully you.
Hopefully me. Yeah, you're right.
But the Soviet Union just didn't have the monetary funds to spend on what it would take to send men to the moon, because really the technology was there to put satellites in space.
Yeah.
At the end of World War II, nobody had just really thought to do it.
I mean,
we had rockets. The Germans had the V2 rockets. So the technology itself was there.
And Sputnik was not far.
No, it was in the 50s. I think it was about the time.
Late 50s, early 60s, something like that.
Yeah, but
Sputnik 1.
Yeah.
I think Sputnik 2 was the first one that cleared orbit, wasn't it?
No, Sputnik got to low Earth orbit, so I think you might be right. it still got to space.
Okay.
It broke the barrier of being
Yeah.
in space.
It was like that Red Bull skydiver. I mean, he was in space, but was he really in space?
Yeah.
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 But I think that answers a lot of it. So, and then we win the Cold War, we win the space race,
Okay.
and we didn't have the technology to go further than that,
Right.
and the Soviets didn't have the money to do it.
Now,
so we cut it off.
Of course, it was probably pretty important that we would win the space race after spending all that money and using all of that taxpayer-funded money at a time when government mistrust was beginning to climb.
Government mistrust only really begins after Watergate, so really badly, which happens in late '72, early '73, and I think does it go into '74?
I think there's probably a substantial counterculture movement beginning to brew as a result of Vietnam.
But normal Americans, do not begin to mistrust the government in the way we see it today. Because normal Americans mistrust the government today. Normal Americans don't begin to mistrust the government until after Watergate and after the debacle that ends. That is Vietnam. So yes, I will agree that young people started to mistrust the government because a lot of them didn't want to go off and get drafted and fight in Vietnam.
Fair.
But normal Americans don't really start to distrust government until Nixon resigns in disgrace. Because, he gets on live TV and it's like, I'm not a crook, and then...
Yeah. And to be clear, that's after JFK gets handled in Dallas under questionable circumstances.
He gets assassinated. I am not going... This is about the moon landing.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, no, because you don't get to do this. You don't get to try to start a side conversation about JFK and try to bait me into a conversation about, did the CIA kill JFK? You don't get to do that.
Well, I'm just saying that the CIA has done some questionable things through the years. And that'll come up later, too. I promise. It's all going to come back up. I did my research, Mr. Thomas, and I'm actually ready to put forward.
I really wish you would actually do something rather than just talk at me.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and hit you with my first science-oriented point. Okay. Earth is surrounded by a number of belts, typically two, and in times of extreme turbulence, and we'll get to that later, belts of electromagnetic force called the Van Allen belts. Now, these are basically a result of Earth's magnetic field catching solar radiation and any kind of space radiation. It can be gamma radiation. It can be all sorts of infrared stuff. And basically any type of excited particles and electrons that are going through space and trying to come down to Earth to kill us all and give us cancer. Okay? And the Earth, Big Daddy Earth, protects us from all these things with the Van Allen belts. And these belts are at their widest point, they are about 60,000 kilometers off of our surface. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're a fair distance away, but the moon is about 384,000 kilometers away. So, we're over 6 times farther away from the moon than the Van Allen belts. My point being that Apollo 11 and the missions thereafter would have to pass through the Van Allen belts.
Yeah, I understand what you're going with this.
Yes. So the Van Allen belts, because their job is to catch excited electrons, happen to, and this is going to wow everybody, carry excited electrons. David Sebeck is a mission scientist at NASA who can be quoted as stating that even a single hit from a single particle can upset sensitive instruments. And I would make the claim that...
but I've read that.
Yeah?
I'm sorry. I'll let you continue on.
I would make the claim that... this phenomenon, which results in millions of dollars in lost satellite equipment every year, might pose an issue to Apollo astronauts.
How long have those satellites been up in space? Would you hazard to guess?
That's a good question. I mean, we launch hundreds of them every year, and hundreds of them come down every year.
So don't you think that... Okay, I'm sorry. Continue on.
Okay. So my point being that the Van Allen belts essentially have the ability to, under certain circumstances, EMP technology that we put up there.
You know what, I would agree with that.
And that we had to make the decision to, at a time where our information and knowledge of space would have been probably substantially less than it is today, and our forecasting of events that would have to do with solar flares and everything of that sort, certainly less than it is today, We made the decision to send a crew of some of our best and brightest minds that the country had to offer in through what we had no idea
But we
how
did
to
because we
predict and
discovered it in
weathercast.
1958.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
sure,
but we knew
sure.
we had an idea of what we were sending them into.
I mean, yeah,
Have
we
you
had an
ever-
idea.
Have you ever heard of EM shielding and like radiation shielding, Mr. Ray?
Oh, of course.
So what's stopping us from building all these electrical components and all these astronauts and just protecting them using shielding?
If that was
And
the case,
redundancy.
there would not be current health concerns over keeping astronauts in the ISS
Yes, there
station
would.
for too long.
Yes, there would, because aluminum can only do so much. In fact, studies show that astronauts have higher mortality rate because they go out into space, because we can't protect them enough from shielding.
So we have to acknowledge that
No.
the shielding does not entirely protect.
Well, no, but
even
that's
equipment and
why
astronauts.
you have redundancy.
Okay.
I mean, you and Apollo had lots of redundancy. In case one thing failed, another thing would turn on. I mean, that's a proven fact.
Okay.
The amount of radiation you would get by traveling through the Van Allen belts is about 0.38 rads per hour.
Okay.
And the astronauts only spent about an hour actually traveling through the Van Allen belt
Sure.
because NASA chose the slimmest pace to get through.
Of course.
And you know how many rads it takes to actually create an electromagnetic pulse?
As far as to create an EMP, true EMP, I would have no idea.
5,000.
5,000. So certainly not
Certainly not
certainly
0.38.
not what we've reached
Yes.
as we cross through the
Yes.
Van Allen belt.
And now I don't deny that NASA definitely, and they admitted that they kind of were like, well, we're gonna throw these guys into space and hope they don't get fried in the Van Allen belt.
Sure.
Oh yeah, I think they did that, but like
It's
but it's not impossible to get through, especially when you take into consideration that aluminum acts as a natural kind of protector.
So it is not impossible. It's certainly not. But it does increase the difficulty. And the fact of the matter is that while there's not enough radiation going to be absorbed to microwave an astronaut in that amount of time, which, if I understand correctly, is where you're kind of going
Well, I'm
with it.
kind of going with the idea that because of how we shielded the electrical components,
Mhm.
and even if it did bother with the electrical components in that hour we were passing through, that
I will tell you that an aluminum shield cannot
well,
stop
no,
free
but I'm
radical
talking about lead.
electrons. Lead cannot either,
Well, Wes, that's what we use for. Yes, it can.
but it's not absolute.
Yeah, that's why we have redundancy, Wes.
But nothing is absolute. And one electron per their own mission scientists is all it takes.
Yeah, but he's also going to say that further on in that quote, he says that lead and aluminum ups the chances of that not happening.
Oh, certainly it's going to increase the chances. But
Yeah,
we live in a very unpredictable world,
Yeah.
Mr. Thomas.
Wes, and we still did it.
Yeah? Okay, so we did. By whose word? By whose word? Who says we did it?
The Soviet Union.
The Soviet Union.
Yeah, the Soviet Union admits that we went to the moon. They received telemetry from us. They received from the Apollo room, from the Apollo spaceship.
Okay.
They received telemetry from us from Apollo 11.
Okay.
West Germany received telemetry from us.
Mhm.
The Chinese received telemetry from us.
Okay.
They were all keeping track of this spaceship as it hurtled towards the moon. So the Soviet Union says it.
That I will debate. Because Soviet technology, per credible sources,
And what's
was
that?
not advanced enough to do deep space tracking out to the moon for our spacecraft
Well, no, but
until
like,
1972, which coincidentally is the exact
hold on.
time period that we canceled
but
all manned Apollo missions.
That's not what I was. No, that's not when we canceled it. That's not what.
Same year.
It's the same year we quit, but that's not the year we canceled it.
We canceled it.
No, but you don't get to make that point
Why not?
because we canceled it 2 years before we knew the Soviets could do it. So why would we cancel it 2 years if we thought we had free range to do all this, like you claim?
Because if we say we're doing it and they get the technology and they catch us lying about it, that begins to throw the
But
entire
Wes,
operation in
The
jeopardy.
West, the Soviet Union had a vested interest. They had a vested, the whole Eastern Bloc,
Mhm.
and saying we were a bunch of liars.
Yeah.
That we were the typical capitalists, and they didn't do that.
So why didn't they?
No, well, I think you should ask because they knew it was true. They knew that we went to the moon because they knew that we did it because they received telemetry from us. The Soviet Union then the day after they denied there being a race to the moon because the Soviet Union reacted to the space race to them losing the space like the same way we reacted to us being beaten to space. They were like, oh, the Americans got the first American on the moon. We're going to get the second. We're going to get there's going to be a first Russian on the moon.
Okay.
And then Soviet children were taught about its loss like Americans saw the first man in space.
Okay.
There were textbooks from Soviet citizens saying, yeah, we learned about the man on the moon.
So what would the political ramifications be if in Soviet Union era politics, what would the ramifications of that be if they were to be like, no, and be like, no, you didn't get to the moon, no, in a time where we had all of this quote unquote telemetry and where we had all this fancy videos and pictures? What happens if the Soviet Union says, no? Does that discredit them in some way, do you think?
I think it was.
Did they have a choice in how they responded to it?
Because the Soviets that had control of the information that their citizens had access to. They just did. In the same way the Chinese had control, and the North Koreans have control today over the information their citizens have access to.
Okay, all right.
They could have lied about it and told their own citizens, yeah, the capitalist dogs are.
But it's not their citizens that they needed to influence,
well,
of course, at a time.
Yeah, because they have to prove that their system's better. And if the Soviet people lose faith in the system of communism, that hurts them.
But this propaganda machine is not targeted towards the Soviet Union, which you're correct. They have total control over they have a state media. At the time, the Soviet Union is going to have a state media, and those people are going to hear whatever the Soviet Union wants them to hear. But at a time when the Soviet Union and Soviet politics is trying to expand communism, it's not the opinions of the Soviet people that matter. It's the opinions of these swing governments that are teetering on communism v. democracy. And if we are going to expand communism to other countries, then we have to take credible stances.
I'm going to say this. Most of the world didn't care.
I'm going to say this. L opinion.
Well, no, because, the people in the world that cared were already separated into West and East.
L opinion.
Well, no, that's objectively true. North America was controlled by us.
Yeah.
Objectively.
Yeah.
Western Europe and parts of Southern Europe were controlled by us. Eastern Europe was controlled by the Soviets. If they had wanted to, they could have told their Eastern satellite states, hey, don't believe the American dogs' lies that they went to the moon, because that can't happen. But they didn't do that because they knew it happened.
Do you think it made them more credible to agree with it?
I don't think the normal person on the street actually understands how we did it. Okay. And I think that's where a lot of these hoaxes come from. So I think if the second superpower on the planet, this country that practically single-handedly beat Nazi Germany through will alone, comes out and says, hey, the Americans, they didn't do it. I think there's a lot of people who are like, oh, well, Soviet Union knows more than us about this because they've been spending the last 20 years trying to go there. Mm-hmm. They probably know what they're talking about. So I'm going to go with them.
So what happens in Cold War era politics when we are all pointing nukes at each other if we make a claim like we put people on the moon and Russia cries nuh-uh? What happens in that area of politics? If the Soviet Union...
The time probably doesn't get started and we remain the way we had been the last 20 years. I mean, not a whole lot changes because we do that all the time.
Okay. And of course, this is a hypothetical situation, right?
What?
The situation I keep bringing up, it's hypothetical. Because, of course, the Soviet Union did concede to the race. Yes, officially.
Well, no, they did.
Yes, officially. Yes.
Yes.
They did. Okay. Elon Musk describes the Apollo landing in quotes that he has given publicly as an, and I quote, anomalous situation. Is Elon Musk a credible source?
I wouldn't say so, no.
You wouldn't say so? Okay. So at a time when he's running a multi-million-dollar company that
let me
makes its money by trying to do stuff.
Elon Musk is what I would call an internet troll.
Okay.
I think he's made his whole personality since he bought Twitter, and well before that, as somebody who likes to stir the pot.
Yeah.
And I think Elon Musk, and I think we can all agree on this, he's kind of like you in that regard.
Yeah.
I think he does a lot of this for the lulz.
I'm better at it than Elon Musk.
I would agree. Because I would.
If I had the resources he had, you'd have no idea the things I'd say.
But I think he says this stuff like this as a way to like stir the pot because he thinks it's funny.
Okay.
Because like Elon Musk is that type of person. He's the type of person to go and say, "Hey, you're all fired."
Okay.
And then turn around and not fire them. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, he's done that type of stuff.
Sure. Is Google the type to internet troll? Is Google as a company, do you think? Okay. So, the World Tour of Artificial Intelligence was a conference that was held by chance in Russia, okay, showcasing some of the most advanced forms of AI that we currently have. Of course, artificial intelligence.
Can I ask you a question? Who all attended? Which countries attended this summit?
Countries, several of them.
Can you?
I'll tell you who the claims are did not attend. Google claims it did not attend.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yep. Russia claims.
But I would be interested in knowing what all countries attended this world conference.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, let's find out.
What did you call it again?
World Tour of Artificial Intelligence.
It's not that type of conference. It looks like it's just something that goes around the world. Then it looks like.
Okay. It seems to me that it kind of moves around.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So this conference was held in Russia, I believe, last year, and reportedly, Google AI are beginning to claim that nearly all video and photos coming out of the Apollo missions showing manned operations on the moon are edited. Now, Google, of course, denies that even their AI was at the showcase. But then, Google would never lie, right? Except that Google has recently had to settle for $93 million for lying to users about data tracking in California. Google has had to come out and lie that in mass advertising campaigns that they highly over-exaggerated the capabilities of certain AI products that they were trying to field to market.
What Google AI who used it? Who came up? Who used the AI?
Oh, your mom, of course.
Oh, so.
Yeah.
So, give me 1 second, please.
Yeah. I'd tell you I used it, but I don't need AI to know that it's all fake. I intrinsically know. Because I'm intrinsically better than you.
So
you have L opinions.
Nikolai
You don't matter.
Gerasimenko said he claimed a photo, not all the photos, a photo of the 1969 American moon landing with help of a Google AI. He then said that the AI found that the image could be fabricated or manipulated. However, he does not say which photo, and he does not say which AI he used.
Okay.
And Google does not have to be. And what happened in 2022, February of 2022, Wesley?
I don't know. I probably used the bathroom a time or two that day.
I would certainly hope so. Specifically, I believe it was February 22nd.
February 22nd? Yeah. I don't care what happened on February 22nd of 2022.
You should, because, that's something that continues to affect all of us.
You continue to have L opinions that are affecting other people.
No, you know what? I have not.
You have terrible opinions. You have bad takes.
I have not degraded myself down to these, to saying anything about you being an L take.
That's because you lack self-awareness.
That's because I am respectful of you, when I really shouldn't be, because you've just been mean to me when I'm trying to talk and have a debate with you.
Okay, you're right. I'll shut up. No, I'm not. Neural network analysis allegedly considers that nearly everything in the Apollo 11 videos and images are fake. That is a quote coming out of, I don't know, source. I'll cite myself. Neural network analysis as a form of AI is alleging that nearly everything in the Apollo 11 videos and images are fake. Now, of course, this type of AI, which allegedly was owned by Google, and Google, of course, just discredits reports that they were even there. Not
But
that
that's
Google,
not how that works. They
never
don't
lied.
have to be there for AI to be used.
Well, right, but what I'm talking about is that their product was allegedly
Well, no,
involved
but their
in this.
product doesn't have to be there, Wes. It's all these AI stuff is all on the internet.
Yeah,
This Russian guy could have gotten, assuming it happened.
Yeah.
Could have gone in, changed the source code of it. Could have, changed the source code of
Sure.
it and made it. And if he didn't made it, or he just came up with it,
Okay.
because what happened I need you to look up what happened in February of 2022.
I don't want to.
Why? Because you know where I'm going with this.
Where are you going with it?
You know what?
Huh?
The Russian Federation
No.
invaded the Ukrainians.
Oh boy.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
And that's pitted the West against the East in a way, the West against Russia, because it's not even the East, it's Russia now, in a way that hasn't happened since the 1980s during the height of the Cold War. Don't you think that that Vladimir Putin would just love to come out and say, hey, the crowning achievement of the United States of America? Yeah, that didn't happen. AI says it didn't happen.
I don't deal in hypotheticals.
And have you ever seen those AI photos?
Have you seen deepfake photos of more recent AI? Imagine this for a second. They all have the correct number of fingers now.
No, that is crazy.
That is crazy.
Do the hands at least look natural?
Yes. Yeah, dude. I watched a video last year of Will Smith eating spaghetti that looked like some Van Gogh painting. And today, Quora AI showing ants traveling through anthills and stuff. Fascinating stuff. Mind-boggling. So real, in fact, that you probably can't tell it from what's real. Which is why, of course, the government has a lot of modern concerns over deepfake AI, because, of course, the reality is that they are advancing at rates that
we should ban AI.
we can't necessarily control.
Right.
Maybe we should.
I mean, no, we definitely should. Not even as a way to.
It might say something we don't like the moon landing's fake. Oh my gosh. Anywho,
That's
so
not what I was saying.
by coincidence, because a lot of my argument has to do with a lot of coincidences, and it really just goes to the average person as far as how many coincidences you want to stomach before you decide maybe they're not some.
Or you just assume that. I'm sorry. Go on.
In 1970, we canceled the Apollo missions that were manned. In 1972, it became official that Soviet advancements in deep space tracking were significant enough that they could follow an object to the moon and back. Now, not to get caught red-handed, we of course would have to stop any and all manned operations if they weren't actually real and we claimed they were. We would certainly have to cancel those because there was no financial purpose to them. Before the Soviet Union would be able to.
No, but you still don't. We just took a logical guess in 1970, like, hey, this drain on the budget that we've had for 15 years. Try to beat the Soviets to the moon. We've got it done. Because we decided in 1970, it happens in July. The next year, we're like, hey, we can't afford this anymore. We're knee deep in this war in Vietnam. People actually want the government to provide them these little things called social services that we never really did before. That's all expensive. And you know what we don't really need anymore? Because we beat the Soviets to the moon?
Yeah.
NASA and its exorbitant budget.
Yeah.
So we've already paid for Apollo 17. Let's slash those budgets to record lows and put that money elsewhere.
Sure. Because the government likes to save money.
That's not what I'm not saying we're saving money. What about what I just said we were saving money?
Well, of course, what you're alleging is that out of fiscal responsibility, we are going to allocate the resources to programs that we don't need towards programs that we do need. And I would say that would be a fiscally responsible exercise of purchasing power.
I would say in the 1960s and 70s, we were much more physically responsible as a country than we are today. So yes, I would say that government back then was a bit more physically responsible.
Yeah.
And they could recognize problems like that.
I don't think you're morally responsible.
I would... Can you have a serious conversation with me?
I am.
No, you're not. You just said I'm not morally responsible. What does that even mean?
It means
why do you think I'm so morally repugnant?
It means that you lack the strength of character necessary to be the only one in the room that knows they're right. And to still believe it.
I know I'm right.
Crowd peer pressure, man. It's going to get you.
What do you mean? You're the one
in the tech. NASA claims.
No. I know I'm right, and you think you're right, but you're wrong. You're just, I'm done.
If history were written by cats, it would be mostly about cats. And dogs and mice would not look very good. Now, of course, the history here was written by us and was probably written in a light where we probably look pretty good. But here's some history that we've had to write since then. NASA claims that the Apollo guidance computer that helped us get our manned aircraft to the moon does not work with our newer systems, and cites this as a reason as to why we can't currently go to the moon with a manned aircraft.
Yeah, I would
Because
say,
we can't get the technology that we had in 1969 to work with our new systems. And, you know, none of the newer stuff, none of the newer advances in supercomputers
show
and
me
technology
that.
would
I want
work.
to see that on your phone.
No, I don't have the burden of proof. Citing
Yes,
me,
you
I
do.
am the source.
Well, no, then that's not good enough. If we can't have a serious conversation about this, why are we doing this?
Your mom. Let's see. Orbiter Forum, okay, which is a forum site. AGC won't accept uplinks from MCC or MFD. Today's computers versus NASA versus Apollo 11's moon landing machine ushered in a new computer. This is galvanize.com.
Okay, can I ask you a question while you're looking this up real quick?
Why not?
What about Apollo 13?
What about it?
You know, it's this crazy explosion that happens in space between the Earth and the Moon.
Sure.
If we truly didn't go to the moon, why did we publicize that?
What do you mean?
You know what?
And by what I mean is that I didn't listen to what you just said.
Okay.
So repeat yourself.
What about Apollo 13?
What about it?
How does Apollo 13 fit into your narrative?
Why wouldn't it?
So you know what happens in Apollo 13, right?
No, tell me.
No, why don't you tell me what you think happens in Apollo 13?
I don't have the burden of proof for bringing in arguments that I don't bring up. You are trying to bring up an argument, then you're going to educate me on your argument. Go ahead, Mr.
Apollo
History,
13
Captain History.
Happened with an explosion in one of the oxygen tanks that blew off the side of the command module's the rocket part of the command module, right?
Yeah.
And we have to cancel the moon landing for Apollo 13 because it's a disaster and we think we're gonna lose 3 Americans out in space. And they all died because of radiation poisoning because they spent so much extra time in space, right?
Yeah.
Not immediately, of course, but they had shorter lifespans.
Oh, sure.
How do you explain that? Why do we include that in an official American history? Wouldn't it have looked better for all of us to, go out of this with 100% win rate? We sent Apollo 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 all up to the moon. They all landed and they all did everything great. But why is Apollo 13 not? Why do we have this near miss of catastrophe?
Because it's believable.
Because it's believable?
Yes.
And you don't think it's believable to, considering the fact that we don't have any other near misses like this in the rest of the space program for us to have this happen?
Well, nothing's perfect. You got to throw in one mistake, otherwise it looks like, because if we were to go out and do everything perfect, then why can't another country? Okay, we have to simulate this difficulty and we have to show this stuff. Okay.
How do you explain the Soviets helping us doing that? Like they tracked they tracked the object up until like halfway there, because that's where their abilities ended.
Yeah.
And they tracked coming back. How do you explain that?
Your mom? I don't know.
Okay.
So here's what I'm gonna throw at you. Okay. NASA, as we said, is a government agency.
Were you able to find a quote for me on that?
Huh?
That's not from a forum.
I don't need a source. Designs depend on. Okay, here's one. Forbes article. The designs for all the different technology that we use, which would include the Apollo guidance computer, depend on outdated equipment that can no longer be produced because it'd be too expensive for us to retool and create these older things, which apparently for some reason do things that our modern technology is not capable of doing.
Well, I wouldn't say that. That's what they're saying. It says that it's too expensive to reproduce things that were built in the atomic age in the 60s because it is expensive. We've moved on from then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is expensive. And, NASA with its limited budget, and it wasn't trying to go back to the moon, for 50 years, and it's really only started up in the last 10 years.
Now, today, you can make the argument that in the 70s, that the United States federal government may have been fiscally responsible, but I think it would be a very big point of contention to say that we would shy.
When was that article written?
That Forbes article?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I find this stuff, I close it, and then you make me find everything
Well,
again.
It's almost like... because when I researched all my stuff, Wesley,
yeah?
Do you know what I did?
What?
I made a new tab every time I found one.
Yeah? Well, guess what? That's because you have L opinions and have to lean on stuff.
That's because, unlike you, I can refer back to my sources and explain things.
I don't want to refer back to my sources.
But what argument do you have if it's just what you think? Because at the end of the day, that's not good enough. 99% of everybody, the Soviet Union, the Chinese, the West and East Germans, the United States, Canada, England, all agree. The whole world all agrees that in 1969 we went to the moon.
They think they agree. They think they agree.
You say ridiculous things, and then you expect me to be able to talk to you.
At the same time, here's something that I can cite, and here's something that you can look up. At the same time that we claim that we've landed men on the moon, the CIA was running programs like MKUltra, which of course had its own ramifications that I won't get into. Project Artichoke. Can you hypnotize somebody to conduct assassinations for a third party? Project Midnight Climax, which was mind control, which was later drafted into MKUltra.
Yeah.
Okay. Project Chaos, which was domestic espionage into the anti-war sentiments that were popping up in Vietnam. Yeah. We had a very vested interest in trying to control what people thought by any means necessary.
So you think there was a mass hypnosis, and MKUltra goes on until the 80s. Most of those programs go through the 70s. They only really get started in the late 1960s. You really think if we're going to lie about this and we're going to rely on stuff that we barely understand? Really?
If it works.
But how do we know it works? How do we know that in 10 years it doesn't wear off, or in 5 years?
So why are we comfortable enough to declassify this stuff if we didn't learn what we needed to learn?
Because first off, the law requires us to declassify it.
The law?
The law does. The Constitution does. And the United States is at least trying to be a laws-based society.
Does the CIA always follow those laws?
I think we both know the answer to that. But the CIA doesn't have anything to go on here. I mean,
conducting espionage on your own people.
Yeah, but like every country does that. We did that before the CIA, Wesley.
Sure.
I mean, just because...
Which is just like what the Soviet Union would do with theirs to an extent, of course.
Well, to a lot more of an extent. Because you can hold a different opinion in the United States. Unlike you couldn't go out onto the street and say, "Hey, I believe in free elections and free capitalism." You would get taken out. You would get grabbed by a KGB agent, thrown into a car, and driven out to a gulag without. That doesn't happen in the United States. You're allowed to have different opinions.
Are you?
Yeah, you are.
Am I?
Yeah.
That's also a point of debate. You see, at the time
Can I-
period, roughly around
the-
this same
the
time
United
period, we were at
States-
the height
the
of
Un- no,
McCarthyism,
the
and you could be deported for
The
having
United
communist
States,
beliefs.
the United States will actively let people get onto the internet, Americans, because we can track everybody who's on the internet. We can, because that's just
Yeah,
a part of the internet.
sure.
We'll let people get onto the internet and talk about the moon landing hoax. And if we didn't have that freedom of speech, and those people would disappear and there wouldn't be anything.
Okay.
But the fact that this is even a conversation shows that, hey, the United States, we're not perfect by any means, but we try to.
Of course, if we wiped out that counter discussion, then that would look pretty shady too.
If we had known about it, and we definitely knew about it because the CIA, because the military came up with the internet. They're the ones who created it. If in the early days of the internet, you don't think that if a random CIA agent got onto the internet and was like, hey, I wonder who all these people talking about the moon landing mean, they couldn't have gotten that stopped. And nobody knew about the internet in the early 90s. They could have gotten it stopped, but they didn't.
I knew about it then.
No, you didn't, because you weren't born in them. You wouldn't even have thought in the 1990s.
Prove it. You're all about burden of proof. Cite your sources. Prove it. Prove it.
When did your parents get married?
I don't know. Prove it.
Well, my parents got married in the early 80s, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't born until 1998. No, not early 80s, like late 80s. I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I wasn't born until 10 years later.
L generation.
Did you call my parents L people?
No, I'm calling you L people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. To be clear.
I mean, you're you're in my generation too, so.
Prove it.
You were born in 99, right?
Prove it.
I'm done.
No. Hold on. Here's what I want us to do. I want us to take 5 minutes each. And I want us to lay our cards on the table and to form a conclusive, start to finish story on why our side is right. And I will not interrupt you except to look at you funnily.
You go first.
Okay. In 1969, no, hold on. In 1958, we create a government agency called NASA, okay, with the goals of exploring space and understanding space. And of course, as we get into the Cold War, the priorities shift to we're going to put a man on the moon, okay? And in 1969, July 16th of 1969, the Apollo 11 mission starts, which is where a lot of my argument centers at because that's allegedly the first time that we did it, okay? That was a big deal. That was world-altering, okay? In order to do that, we had to put a space shuttle with what we would consider by today's standards outdated technology that we claim to no longer have access to because we would have to retool machines and it's too expensive to make. And we would have to push these things through radiation belts that we didn't fully understand at the time, but that it is impossible to know definitively that electronics would not be fried by what would only take a single radical electron or dielectron, okay? This was done at a time where multiple CIA programs existed that were designed specifically to hypnotize the public or to change their narrative or to make them do something that they didn't want to do or would not do on their own. Okay. Since then, we have the program. All manned missions get stopped in 1970 when it becomes evident that within the next couple of years, if not already, the Soviet Union will have detective capabilities strong enough to be able to spot our aircraft in space and be able to prove us wrong if we're claiming we're doing something that we don't. Now, how do we know that? We know that through various means, not the least of which that we got a U-2 spy plane in low orbit spotted by their radar, which incentivized the creation of SR-71 Blackbird. Okay. Since then, we have more modern times and more modern people and more modern technology. We have very relevant people like Elon Musk saying that the Apollo 11 landing was an anomalous situation. Now, of course, it would probably devalue his company, which is SpaceX, which, happens to be a space exploration company that hopes to eventually land people on Mars. It would highly devalue and get rid of the faith in his company if he were to come out and say the moon landing is fake. But he, of course, has to acknowledge the challenges he's facing, and he refers to the moon landing as what he quotes an anomalous situation. Now, we have AI conferences that are happening in foreign governments that are stating that widespread evidence of the moon landings taken by the Apollo missions have the potential to be faked. They may be faked, and in some cases are more than likely fake. But now, of course, this comes from different sources in the world that we would consider not as credible. But that also comes from a people in a government that has a vested interest in controlling how we think, what we think, and has a vested interest in controlling narratives. Okay? There's a widespread effort to discredit this type of reporting. Google's AI allegedly was involved in this, and Google debates that their AI was ever involved in this. This conference was publicly held, okay, visited by influential people. Vladimir Putin is an influential person. Whether or not we consider him the most honest of people because of our foreign relations with Russia at the moment and in the wake of the Ukraine war, that's debatable. But either way, relevant, certainly. There are a lot of people that do listen to him.
Yeah, you can be relevant and still be a bad guy.
Oh, of course. There are a couple people like that throughout history.
I'd say most of them.
Yeah. It's almost like power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. So my point being that when we did it, we didn't understand what we would have to go through to do it because we didn't understand things like the Van Allen belts. Really, truly.
We did, but yeah.
Yeah.
But we did.
Yeah. Since this happened, we're the only people that have ever done it successfully, that have ever put a man on the moon. Okay? There could be a slew of political motives that would have denied the Soviet Union the opportunity to debate us. And if they had debated us, it would have really thrown their reputation out the window if we could somehow control the opinions of other countries. Okay? It would have really seriously hurt the Soviet Union's standing to try to argue with us at a time when there was not enough significant technology to audit our own, because we were at the forefront of technology, of spyware, of videoware, of the things that we needed to win the Cold War against the second most powerful nation in the world. Okay? We today, in a time when our government seems to fiscally be not the most sound, okay? We claim that we cannot go back and retool and recreate.
No, we're not claiming we can't go back.
No, we're claiming that it would be too expensive to retool and redesign and recreate these older things, which somehow do stuff that our newer technology doesn't. True. We seem to be incapable.
That's not true.
You are not true. You're not true.
But because we are going back to the moon.
I'm reminded.
And the Artemis plan and the Artemis program. Oh. I mean, that's something that we are actively doing.
Oh, of course. And I'm sure we'll get there. Get there.
Like we did, what did we decide, 55 years ago?
It'll be groundbreaking when we get there for the first time.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
But you broke the terms of the agreement because you always break them because you got uncomfortable with the case I was making.
It's called, you spew so much BS all the time that it's physically hard for me not to just let you continue on.
Here's the thing.
I'm going to continue. I'm going to move on.
We can't be the only ones that have done it.
Yes,
the only ones that are saying that we did it. You are claiming that we did it because we say we did it, and nobody's saying we didn't.
No, I'm saying that we did it because the Soviet Union said we did, because West Germany says we did it, that East Germany says we did it, that China, which is a country that right now in the world has a vested interest in discrediting the American system, continues to agree that we did it.
You have a vested interest in attempting to discredit me.
Yes, because you're wrong.
No, because you are
I'm going to make my point. I'm going to make a point here. There were 400,000 NASA scientists and industry workers who worked on the project, who worked on the moon landing.
Yep.
Watergate, the scandal that brought down Richard Nixon, had 69 people who knew what happened that night that the Watergate Hotel was broken in. And those people couldn't keep their story straight for 3 weeks to wait for the political file to break down. They kept on, every day they kept on changing their story and making themselves look really, really suspicious. If 69 people couldn't do it in 3 weeks, how have 400,000 NASA scientists and industry men now broken silence over what would be the greatest hoax in the history of the world?
I have an answer to that.
And no, I'm not going to let you.
The most advanced mind control programs that the world has ever seen is
Then why didn't Nixon use it on his people to stop?
Because Nixon did not have access to these programs.
Dude, you are so far down this rabbit hole of that the deep state's out to get everybody, and that we just can't do anything without the state or the elite or the other. You know what the greatest conspiracy theory is in all time? That human beings, as a whole, need somebody, can't just accept that sometimes the world's bad and that the world's going down the wrong track, and we have to create the elite. We have to create an other. Say, oh well, these people are making the world worse to better for them to better themselves. You know, it'd be that money, it'll be that whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
The greatest conspiracy theory is the fact that maybe everybody's just trying their best, and the best isn't good enough.
I don't think their best was good enough in 1969.
I think we went to the moon in 1969. And here's why: you brought the Van Allen radiation belts. You still have not been able to debate the fact that radiation shielding stops a lot of that, and that redundance stop a lot of the issues revolving around that aluminum lead material is used. Astronauts, Google AI. Russia has a vested interest in making America look bad, especially since the United States has used its funding over the last 2 years to support Ukraine, which is actively involved in a land war with Russia. A war that is not, by all extents, going well for the Ukrainians right now. That this Sergei Gergimov used Google AI, that he doesn't specify which Google AI he uses. He then doesn't specify which NASA photos he uses on the moon landing to show that, hey, this might have been AI generated, which doesn't make sense because the Russians have a vested interest in trying to prove us wrong and trying to, bring us down a notch. The Soviet Union at the time, and for the next 50 years, up until really just recently, did not deny that we landed on the moon. They didn't tell any of the satellite states secretly, because we have access to all the secret documents from the KGB. Because we know, for example, how close we came to a nuclear war in 1983, or how close we came to nuclear war in 1962.
Would that indicate that our surveillance technology was likely a little bit more advanced than theirs?
No, because we only ever got our hands on it after the Soviet Union fell, and Yeltsin opened up the KGB archives.
Can I cut in for just a second and note that Union University states that the permeability of lead is low and has basically no effect on magnetic fields. That lead can effectively attenuate certain kinds of radiation because of its high density and high atomic number. This is a Wikipedia thing, which is peer-edited, of course, but usually peer-edited by qualified people. Principally, it's effective at stopping gamma radiation. Quara states lead isn't the best at blocking or absorbing electromagnetic radiation. Radiant energy of all sorts, EMF, means either electromotive force or so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is, because lead has its own unique properties, its own densities, its own molecular structures, that it's going to be really good at stopping some types of energy and not good at stopping others.
We can also use, hardened ships, which are things that we use during the Apollo mission. Use things like insulating substrates instead of usually semiconductor wafers. So things like silicon on sapphire are commonly used. Bipolar integrated circuits generally have higher radiation tolerance than CMOS circuits. Magnetoresistive RAM and MRAM is consistently a candidate to provide radiation harden. So there are ways to harden. I mean, but let's not debate. Let's not get. I said lead and aluminum because lead and aluminum are things we use. But let's not debate the fact that there are ways to harden electronics against radiation.
I am going to debate because in a world where most of the space around you is truly empty space, and our bodies are mostly empty space, like 99.99% empty space. The nuclei of atoms never touch each other. The electron clouds are just areas where electrons may be or not be. The fact of the matter is that there's no such thing as a solid wall that can catch electrons.
It also takes 5,000 rads to harm
a person.
Electronics.
No.
Yeah, I literally looked it up.
No, you're wrong.
Yeah, no, you're wrong.
L opinion, you're wrong. L opinion.
How does the electronic stuff work when you take it to Chernobyl?
L opinion.
Because it does work, and we've got pictures, and used, 20 years later, of course.
I think that the types of energy that are coming from the Chernobyl reactor are likely different than what are coming from space. And I think that's a fact.
I think we're going to have to agree that, like, you're wrong. Because all you do is yap about things that you can't prove. Because how many times have you said, I'm going to use myself as a source?
I'm so tired of you having to be spoon-fed an official narrative.
No.
Come here, U.S. government. I need to know what to think
Come
today.
Come here, Mr. Putin. I really need to know how bad America is at everything. That's what you sound like.
I don't have any vested interest in trying to believe Vladimir Putin on anything.
Yes, you do, because that's all you use.
No.
You believed him on the interview. You believed him on this. You believe him on. You used him as a relevant source.
Explain to me for a second why you think that Vladimir Putin cannot. Now, I'm not saying that everything that the guy says is true, because of course he has a vested interest in his own people and his own government.
Because Vladimir Putin wants
he
to
cannot
restore the Soviet Empire.
No, but that doesn't mean.
And that is a direct.
But that does not mean. That does not mean that if he steps outside and tells you the sky's blue, that you get to say it doesn't matter what his opinion is. I wouldn't say that, because that's verifiable. I can go out. I can literally go outside and see that the sky's blue. No, you can't, because it's dark out, and you're dumb, and you have a bad opinion. You have bad takes. The coldest takes. Your takes are like leftover, like wet napkins. Like I put it in the freezer.
Hey, this is you. You're literally spoon feeding yourself Russia's BS.
Dude, because I'm not on anything to do with Russia.
Yes, you are. That's how many times have you brought up Russia?
Because they are an important player and are the counterculture of this debate.
Because they are the ones who are going to.
That would have tried to discredit us if they knew.
So why didn't they?
Because they knew that they couldn't.
No, because that's not the point. Because they could have lied. They could have said to all of their people, "Hey, the Americans are going to say some BS about them going to the moon."
And when we brought up all this supposed evidence, then it would have looked like they were dumb.
They could have said it was fake, like you're doing right now.
They could have said it was fake. They could have said it was real.
You, as a single person in the world in 2024, has the resources to figure out how that the moon landing is fake, which you claim, then the Soviet Union, the second most powerful country in the world, in 1969 could have done it.
Get a telescope. Find me the flags. Get a telescope and show me the U.S. flags on the moon. Show them to me.
Why don't you get me a telescope?
Because they're expensive, and I'm
literally a college. I'm literally a master's. I'm literally paying money to go back to.
Yeah, but you have a fancy PC right there. It was money. It was money.
Yeah, and you know what? That PC cost could not buy me a telescope good enough to do that.
You know what could?
If you sold your M1A, we could do it.
I got to tell you something, my guy. I would rather volunteer to go on some Soviet Union suicide rocket to the moon than sell that for the purposes of you trying to use the telescope to discredit me.
I'm done.
But you would fail.
I'm done.
You would fail.
I'm done.
Yeah, you're done. You're done because you don't have an argument. You're done because you don't have an argument.
No, I'm done because you can't argue anything in good faith.
No, I don't want to argue with you in good faith because I don't have an official